details of the hearing yesterday, which ran, I think, till dinner time in the courtroom of Hamilton County Criminal Court Judge Don Poole. The attorneys arguing back and forth over the claims of the defendant seeking relief of his conviction with police malfeasance and ineffective assistance of counsel in his criminal trial 8 years ago. David Toulis, we're talking with Michael Gilliland of Chattanooga Organized for Action. We are arguing that you should love your neighbor and buy local. You should be prejudiced for local. And I'm the blogger with the biggest pen, David Toulis. The sponsoring site is Nuganomics.com. Make sure you go there today to find out the story that has, I think, riveted at least one or two people in North Hamilton County about the case against a man pending. It's all pending. Justin Whaley, who runs a gun range in Spencer, Tennessee, a big favorite among police officers and sheriff's deputies and troopers and other people who like to carry guns around on the job. And of course, lovers of the Second Amendment. They are all big fans of Dead Zero shooting camp in Spencer. And Justin Whaley is the owner, and he was involved in a fatal car accident July the 3rd. And my post asks why the delay, especially since there was an admission by him that he had been drinking prior to the wrong way head-on collision crash, which took the life of a family man, a married man with 4 children, James Brumlow, his wife Jamie, contacting me only this morning about the story. Though I had tried to meet her earlier, having gone out down a lane enshrouded with bushes to look for her residence and her house. And she read my story and realizes that, the story is out now, and neither the man who is a prospective defendant, since charges are pending, the prospective defendant, Justin Whaley, named in the press, that's me here, David Toulis, and also the man slain and died very shortly after being taken to the hospital extracted from his crumpled up sedan on Highway 111. David Toulis, and we are covering local economy and the free market. Love your neighbor and buy local. And the number to call is 800-8949. I really would like you to chime in today. Maybe you have something to tell us. Maybe you can have a question for Michael Gilliland, who is proposing what is rightly called cash bail reform. And there are some steps in that direction in Nashville, the state capital, that will effectively rehumanize the justice system and not have judges following anymore a list that says, well, if you're charged with this offense, your bail is that, because bail is not punitive. It's not intended to be punitive. Or Michael Gilliland, is it intended to be punitive? Is there something in the form of punishment that in practice today is part of the cash bail system?
I think in practice, that's definitely what it becomes. It becomes a sort of crime revenge that, regardless of whether you're actually proven to have committed a particular crime, the motivation is that anyone who finds themselves in the position at the other end of the law is they are worth all the sort of indignities that they suffer from, including massive economic burdens, especially for those who are in the worst position already.
Well, how is it that the cash bail program or the cash bail custom in the judicial system in Hamilton County offends the poor the most? Start at the beginning, Michael.
How do they offend the most?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it's really, when it comes down to it, cash bail in and of itself is wealth-based discrimination. And so the difficulty of creating what is the horrible conditions in the jail, over time, those who are the poorest are those necessarily not based off of the severity of the crime, but just over the state of poverty. They're having to spend extended time in this. Not to mention the type of crimes that are often picked up, particularly in working class neighborhoods, or over criminalization in particular neighborhoods or neighborhoods of color that aren't the same. These standards aren't the same all across the state.
Now, you are the chairman of Chattanooga Organized for Action. What is your group proposing to to be done for the benefit of these criminal defendants here in the county or across the state, Michael?
So COA is a partner organization in a group called CALEB, Chattanoogan's in Action for Love, Equality, and Benevolence. And this is a coalition of faith communities, labor unions, community organizations like ours that are coming together to try to provoke change and build power for meaningful change in the community. And we want to take the example of Nashville. Nashville's Community Bail Fund that was set up last year has been remarkably effective. And they've partnered with a group called Just City out of Memphis in order to create this bail fund. So far, 100% of people that they've helped is shown back up to court. 50% of those people who've been helped by the bail fund have had all of their charges dropped. And that money is money that's going to be recycled to help the next person. At the same time, they're able to bring up the inherent contradictions of justice and the money bail system. So we want to see the same thing in Hamilton County. And this group, CALEB, our coalition organization, is going to be hosting a public event in October in order to present the idea of a community bail fund to the public here.
Well, Michael Gilliland, who are the people in Chattanooga whose opinions, whose views on this kind of question matter the most? Let's start with two. Well, let's say the most important man in the county, the most powerful man is the sheriff, Jim Hammond, recently reelected. Say something about him and what he may have said about cash bail reform, and then maybe, if you would please, mention some of the others whose work, whose views are important. For example, let me just beg that you say something about Neil Pinkston, the district attorney.
All these people are going to be important to get meaningful change in the criminal justice system. For Sheriff Hammond, and I will say that Sheriff Hammond has been very vocal about the overcrowding of the local jail, which is one of the main responsibilities of his office that he oversees. Both he and the county mayor are very aware of the overcrowding. Now, some of the things that have been used as possible examples of ways to fix it, such as building a new private prison, I think a lot of people in the community would find anathema and only feeding the problem, not addressing it.
All right, well, what's wrong with the private prison? Say something about what that would look like and who would run it.
Like Silverdale. Silverdale was originally, when it was established, it was one of the first private prisons in the United States. It actually became the poster child for Corrections Corporation of America that went on to change its name to Core Civic, based in Brentwood. And these are private corporations, private businesses that run prisons and get paid to make sure that every bed is filled. And so it is a major pressure that includes major lobbying and funding in order to push harsher restrictions that lead to greater criminalization, greater jail time, and ballooning of the problem.
I was extracting from the 2017 Hamilton County Sheriff's Department report, you might say, Sheriff Jim Hammond's moral code, and he mentions that he wants to have people of integrity at all times. That means being ethical in all matters, so that we are always identified as people of good character and morality, role models for true justice. He goes on to say that he wants the Sheriff's Department to maintain a high quality of life through collaborative problem solving, which is what you're describing here, Michael Gilliland. And then he goes on to say, my personal value system based on my strong Christian beliefs, my education in the disciplines of the criminal justice system, my dedication to integrity, social justice, moral absolutes for me and my employees, and the desire to see all citizens rise to their full potential in a safe and protected environment. Now, here's the verb: drive my passion. All these things drive my passion to be a reputable and effective sheriff. So, what is his role as the most powerful man in the county to make this happen? He wants there to be relief on the jail. Okay, so with whom else does he work?
More than anything, his opinion is important. First off, in order for a community bail fund to work or for meaningful community reform, the judges have to play a major part. Right now, after a person sees a magistrate before arraignment and they're assigned a bond of any certain amount, once they appear before a judge, that judge's power is really remarkably arbitrary when it comes to bails. Bails can be done away with. They can also be brought up to a higher amount. They can stay where they are. And there aren't very many restrictions on the the ability for a judge to do however he sees fit regarding bail. And
So
so
judges can do things independently per their own bench, right?
that's
In
right.
their own venue.
That's right. And you see a major difference in the bails that are set, the amounts and the number of bails that are set, depending on which judge is presiding over cases. So having this board of judges who are willing to sign on to this and other forms of pretrial services in the same way that they signed on to the local mental health court that was established last year, that would be a major push, a major benefit towards reform. I would also say that the public defender's office is going to be a major partner that would need to be at the table for real meaningful change to be done. They're the ones that are the closest to the largest number of people who are indigent and who find themselves in the court system. And so their connection to people who find themselves in jail is going to be indispensable.
What about Neil Pinkston? Who is he, and what is his perspective?
The district attorney, the main prosecutor for the area, and his charges and what he has to say about the effectiveness or possibility of meaningful reform. In the same way that the sheriff's has, it's going to carry a lot of weight in the county. And so our hope is that the district attorney is going to be very open to cash bail reform.
And Sheriff Hammond, I think, has a strong interest in this, Michael Gilliland, because he's pointed out that I think he said about a fourth or maybe a third of the people in his jail, which is one of his chief charges of oversight, have mental problems. And he, in his report, talks about the need for de-escalation, and he's trying to get all of his deputies to take the crisis intervention team course, which is a week-long course that you're sort of off the job on your routine law enforcement toils, but to take this class, but is taught by volunteers in the area of mental health experts. And it deals with things such as psychotropic medication, Alzheimer's, dementia, people with personality disorders. And it's apparently post-OK approved by the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. And so there's an intersection here between the bail bond problem, again, often dealing with poor people, and then this other category of people who have mental problems.
Absolutely. I've heard the sheriff talk about how that unfortunately the Hamilton County Jail has become the chief mental health service provider in the area because they're the ones that have the most direct with decreasing funding towards mental health services. They're the ones that have the most direct and constant exposure to and relationship with those with mental disabilities.
Well, we're the right-wing radio station, Michael Gilliland, and you are, I guess we could say, perhaps the leader of the progressive, I might say, left side of the world politically. But the argument that my listener hears, I think, in what you're saying, especially if he's a conservative, right-wing Republican sort of listener, is when you say decriminalization, suddenly he feels in jeopardy. Suddenly he feels that, wow, Michael Gilliland, who's, he's on the left, he's this the COA group, and they're progressives, they're Democrats, and what they really want to have is an end to law and order. Well, could you address that line of thinking that I think sometimes is more reactive perspective from my listener and not necessarily something he's thought through? How do you deal with that listener who has that concern that decriminalization, sort of de-escalation, really will bring about chaos in society, disorder in society, crime rampant in the streets, and so on?
Okay, I'll definitely try. I think that largely in America, there are two major narratives revolving around the criminal justice system and what the impetus of philosophies are pushing it. One is the crime revenge idea or view of absolute punishment, death penalty for every offense, or in the extreme, the idea that whatever a person does, if they find themselves in that position, then this is going to be the brutality of the system is going to be a deterrent for people not to want to go in. And I think the alternative to that is to be pragmatic and to look at understanding that one of the primary community goals is safety within the community. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants to be protected and to be able to work together. And when people make decisions that go against that, especially for violent offenders, the community definitely has to protect themselves. The question becomes, what's the most pragmatic, efficient, effective way to achieve justice in this situation? What's going to get the work done? What's going to get the work done that protects the public and public investment, and that creates a safer community? And I believe that a lot of studies over and over in the criminal justice system shows that this punitive example of extreme brutality and mass incarceration is not creating that situation where we have a safer community.
Well, I think my point on top of that, Michael Gilliland, is that my listener is probably more righteous than God. And if one just reads the Old Testament, one sees that there is not the punitive system that we have in our country. If you're a thief, there is no prison for thievery. There just isn't. There is restoration of the thing stolen, and then a percentage on top, which is like a premium, and that's it. There is no more consequence for thievery than that. And so my listener who thinks, well, if you're a felony thief, you've stolen something past $1,000, that means that you may have to make restitution, which may or may not be the case here. But then you have 1 year prison term or more. And God, there is no prison in the Bible. There is no state sanctioned private secretive execution in the Bible either. And so when there's a property crime that's a non-capital offense, there is always victims' rights. That's first, and then it's always about restitution and restoration. So the criminal has to restore to the victim what he took, and maybe a little bit more. And that's it. And then he's restored to his place in the community. Once he's paid it back, it's finished. He's not now branded and have his ID stamped with criminal on it. And so there's, in other words, there's much more lenity and grace and softness and sweetness, and you might say overlooking things in the Bible, the harsh, wicked Old Testament that some people think about, than there is in any political discourse from many conservative people who want, lock them all up and throw away the key kind of thing. The 3 strikes and you're out theory, Michael Gilliland. So that's my listener, who professes to be a Christian, is conservative somehow, and he's not really thinking that he's in following the conservative argument for more prisons, more jails, more crime, more aggressive protection of cops and things like that. That he's creating not a free and equitable society, but really one that's a kind of a police state. And let me ask you this: are we safe in a police state? And how would you respond to my comment?
Well, I would say first off, I grew up. My father was a pastor, and I think from a Christian perspective that I've grown up in all my life, I would think that the Christian community would be the first to actually believe in the possibility of redemption over harsh punishment and judgment. At least the possibility, and that the best system working would be one of tying back people to the community rather than purely ostracizing them, making life more difficult constantly, and making a situation in which people are paying for often minor offenses for the rest of their lives. We need a stable community. And my hope is that people within faith communities all across Chattanooga would be able to agree on that.
Right. The restoration of the criminal is that, well, once you've paid that back, people may watch you more carefully. Well, he stole a couple of times before. We just need to watch out for him. But thievery is a moral problem. You steal because you don't have a relationship. You steal because you're not sure of the future, and you don't have that sense of being able to have care for you and the prospect of your own work bringing you means with which to make purchases. It is a moral question, and you are not respecting someone else's property rights. So there's a high regard for yourself, low regard for others. These are moral issues that Christianity addresses internally to the individual. And so the Christian the idea of a biblical jurisprudence is full of this openness where the perpetrator is again in society. Once the judge has told him, okay, pay back the car you stole, plus a fine that's a third, let's say a third of the value of that car, and if the victim accepts that, then it's all finished, and that is really, my listener and I, we tend to be much more good judgmental than God. We're much harsher than God, much more rigorous than God, much more demanding than the equity in the commandments. And so I think what you're proposing in the way of bail bond is a way of bail bond reform is a way of pushing back these ideas of empire, if you will, that we're living under now. Michael Gilland, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you'll let us know about this event with Caleb, the Chattanoogan's in action for love, equality, and benevolence.
Coming in October.
David Toulis, Michael Gilland is the head of Chattanooga Organized for Action, and we'll be right back. We've got the CBS News, and at 3, Sean Hannity, and this is David Toulis. Thank you for tuning in.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
Hamilton County Health Department says at least 2 Chattanoogans were infected with E. coli after eating at the River Drifters restaurant on Suck Creek Road. Police believe the E. coli came from the well water. The health department says the restaurant is complying and they're working on getting a new, healthier water source. The location otherwise has a spotless health record. A man was blasted in the thigh with a shotgun in Cook Park, Athens. Police say it happened just after 8 p.m. Sunday. They found Willie Lusain Jr. with his leg shredded with buckshot. Police discovered he had gotten into an argument with a 17-year-old who left and came back packing heat. Police say they know who the 17-year-old is. And a 69-year-old from Mowbray Mountain, Roger Kelly, was shot to death on Hotwater Road in Saudi Daisy. Police say it happened just after 5 p.m. on Sunday. Police say he was already dead when they got to the scene. All that remains is to find out who did it. Belle St. John for Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7, Action News Now.
Chattanooga weather.
Expect lots of sunshine and good-looking weather out there through your afternoon. Heating up a little more, but still not bad. Highs near 90. Tonight, fair lows upper 60s. For Wednesday, some high clouds, still mainly dry. Highs up around 90, near 90 again Thursday with a few isolated afternoon storms. Looking to buy or sell a home? Real Living Southern Realty provides real answers and customized marketing solutions. Serving the entire tri-state area. Check rlsouthernrealty.com for more. And I'm Sorgene Walsh, Chief Meteorologist, Pastor 4.
Nooga Radio 92.